The sea split open with violence as a shadow lunged from below, jaws snapping through the water. Arion surged forward, his body cutting a silver streak through chaos. Neris squealed, her small frame trembling as currents whipped her around. Thalora cried, "Stay close, follow the stream." The pods scattered, fear gripping every beat of their fins. Morven darted aside, his eyes narrowing at Arion's hesitation. Blood spiraled into the waves as another dolphin fell. Silence replaced by frenzy. Arion thought, "If I fail, Neris is lost." The shark circled again, hunger in its cold black eyes. Neris cried, "Arion," as her voice cracked through the roar of waves. The storm above mirrored the panic below, lightning burning streaks of white across the surface. In the darkness, survival hinged on speed, instinct, and sacrifice. Arion drove the pod forward, heart pounding, as the predator closed in for another strike. Neris flailed against the current, her body trembling as shadows circled closer. Arion darted beside her, pushing her upward with his flank. "Do not stop," he called, voice sharp against the chaos. Thalora pressed forward, urging the others with piercing clicks. Morven turned away, his gaze fixed on freedom instead of unity. The sea roared, waves pounding overhead like drums of war. Neris gasped, "I cannot." But Arion's stare hardened, his heart beating in thunder with hers. He thought of every failure lurking behind him, every predator waiting. The pod faltered, exhaustion slowing their movements as lightning scarred the sky again. The storm thickened, making the water feel heavier, colder. Each breathless second stretched thin, survival becoming a fragile thread. Arion forced himself forward, his body aching, his will chained only to Neris' fragile cry. The shadows lengthened beneath them, black shapes darting with predatory grace. Arion surged left, pulling Neris with him as another shark sliced through the water. Morven swerved near, his voice edged with scorn. "Your path will drown us all." Neris whimpered, trapped between fear and fatigue. Thalora cried, "Silence, swim together or die alone." The shark twisted back, jaws clashing with snapping force, spraying froth in the current. Blood from earlier wounds drifted around them, drawing the predator closer. Arion knew hesitation meant death. His body bent like a blade through the sea. Neris' tiny frame wavered, barely keeping pace. Another lightning flash revealed the predator's black eye locked on them. Patient, merciless, endless. The pod's unity trembled under fear, while survival bled through each heartbeat. Thalora cut ahead, her body strong despite the scars. "Follow the current," she commanded, her tone fierce. Arion pushed Neris closer to Thalora, trusting her instincts. Morven lagged behind, his silence sharp as betrayal forming. Neris gasped, her movements faltering again, eyes wide. Arion urged, "You must fight, Neris, the sea will not wait." The shark's shadow curved around them once more, its patience terrifying. The pod darted through churning water, every beat of their tails strained by storm currents. Overhead, thunder cracked like the breaking of the world. Fear bound them together, and yet distance grew between hearts. Arion locked his gaze on Thalora's path, clinging to her wisdom while the ocean drowned their hope. The sea split with horror as one of the younger dolphins strayed too far. The shark struck with terrifying speed, jaws snapping shut with finality. A crimson cloud spilled into the water, pulling gasps from the pod. Neris shrieked, her voice echoing through the waves. Arion's heart thundered with rage, guilt searing him. Morven hissed, "Your path kills us," before veering aside. Thalora turned sharply, her voice burning. "No, his path is survival." The storm above cracked louder, lightning chasing shadows into violent clarity. The pod scattered in blind panic, each stroke fueled by terror. Arion forced himself forward, blood swirling behind him like ghosts of failure. Survival demanded sacrifice, and the ocean had claimed its first. The storm calmed, but the ocean still heaved with heavy swells, each wave carrying echoes of loss. Neris swam close to Arion, her body trembling as she pressed against him. "Will they come back?" she whispered with innocence, her voice breaking. Arion steadied his breath, his muscles aching, his heart torn. "They are gone, Neris, but we remain, and we must keep moving." The Laura hovered near, her gaze heavy with sorrow, scars glinting under faint moonlight above. Morven drifted at a distance, his silence sharp, his eyes burning with judgment. The pod's movement slowed, fatigue dragging on every fin. The weight of the dead clung to the survivors like salt on skin. Arion forced himself to believe he could still guide them, though fear gnawed at every thought. Neris' small cry anchored him, her survival had become his purpose. The pod gathered in shallow waters where currents softened, a fragile calm settling over them. Neris nestled against Arion, exhausted, her movements sluggish. The Laura said, "We cannot stop too long, predators hunt still." Arion nodded, though his body longed for rest. Morven broke the silence with scorn. "Rest or swim, it does not matter if we have no leader strong enough." Arion's jaw tightened, his pride pierced. Neris raised her head weakly, her eyes searching Arion's face for hope. He whispered, "I will lead, no matter the cost." The Laura gave a faint approving nod, her presence a quiet reminder of heritage. Fear clung, but in that stillness, Arion felt the fragile bond of trust binding them together again. The sea shimmered faintly, as dawn's first light pierced through dark clouds above. Morven swam closer to Arion, his voice edged with ambition. "You cannot protect her forever. The weak drag us down." Arion flared with anger, his body stiffening. "Neris is not weak. She is our future." Neris tucked herself tighter against Arion, fear swelling in her eyes. The Laura interrupted, her voice firm. "Morven, the pod survives together or not at all." Morven sneered, his tail lashing with frustration. The others drifted uneasily, their loyalty fractured by tension. Arion's chest tightened, burden heavy, yet he refused to yield. He pressed Neris forward, his voice low but steady. "I will not abandon her. Not ever." The Laura glided ahead, her movements graceful despite age and scars. Her voice was calm, filled with weight. "I have seen currents like these before. They will lead to safer waters if we trust them." Arion nodded, steadying Neris with a gentle nudge. Morven muttered, "Safe waters do not exist anymore. The ocean belongs to teeth and storms." Neris blinked at the Laura, eyes wide, clinging to her presence. The Laura looked back, soft but resolute. "You must carry the lessons of those who swam before you." Arion felt strength flow through him, the burden shifting into duty. The pod followed in fragile silence, bound with the Laura's wisdom, as though it was the last light left in the sea. The sea softened to turquoise as the storm passed, calm ripples brushing the pod's weary bodies. Neris swam gently around Arion, her laughter brief and light. For a heartbeat, the ocean seemed forgiving. The Laura smiled faintly, her gaze softened by the calf's joy. Morven looked away, his expression unreadable, his silence heavy. Arion's heart lifted slightly, hope stirring where despair had rooted. He whispered, "Stay close, Neris. Your light guides us all." Neris twirled beside him, her innocence easing the tension woven into the pod. The brief peace carried with it a cruel fragility, but for the moment, the ocean gave them breath. The ocean darkened as storm clouds rolled above, thunder shaking the waves. The pod pushed forward, their bodies strained by the mounting swells. Neris cried, "It is too strong," her voice breaking with fear. Arion pressed against her, urging her on. "You must keep swimming, Neris. The storm will not wait." The Laura's gaze hardened as she called, "Trust the currents, they will not lie." Morven scoffed, his voice sharp, "Currents cannot save us from drowning." Lightning split the sky, flooding the sea with violent light. The pod twisted and fought, every tailbeat dragging heavier. Arion's chest burned as exhaustion gnawed at him, but he would not let Neris sink. The storm thickened, and the ocean became a wall of fury that pressed against them without mercy. The waves grew heavier, dragging Neris downward with each surge. She whimpered, "Arion, I cannot breathe." Her body twisted weakly, bubbles slipping from her mouth. Arion pressed closer, his flank bracing hers, whispering, "You will not fall. I will carry you." Alora circled back, her tone urgent. "Push her upward. Do not let her sink." Morven rolled his eyes, his voice cold. "She will drown us all if we cling to her." Arion's anger seared, his body trembling, yet he drove Neris upward with force. The storm clawed at them, the water thick with chaos. Neris' cry cut through again, fragile and desperate. Arion thought only of her survival, his own strength crumbling against the weight of the sea. Morven darted closer, his voice sharp as a blade. "Arion is weak. He risks us all for a calf who will not live." The pod froze in unease, their eyes flickering between them. Arion straightened, his body quivering with fury. "Neris is worth more than your pride. She is our future." Neris trembled, hiding against his side. Alora cut in, her tone firm. "Enough. Division will kill us faster than predators." Morven sneered, his tail lashing violently. "Then follow him to death if you must." "I will not." The storm above cracked with thunder, lightning burning white streaks across the sea. The pod's unity shattered, fear and doubt rippling like currents between them. The pod swam into waters thick with drifting debris. Plastic bags floated like jellyfish, nets tangled like death traps. Neris blinked with fear, whispering, "The water burns my eyes." Arion's chest tightened as oily streaks brushed against him. Alora said softly, "This is not the ocean we knew." Morven hissed, "This poison proves the sea is no longer ours." The pod weaved clumsily through the wreckage, their movements slowed by exhaustion. The storm above drove more waste into their path, each current carrying danger. Arion pressed forward, his heart aching as Neris coughed weakly from the stinging water. The sea itself had become another predator, silent, merciless, unforgiving. Hunger gnawed at the pod as hours passed without food. Neris' voice shook. "Arion, my stomach aches." Arion pressed her closer, whispering, "We will find something. Hold on." Alora's eyes dimmed, her voice weary. "The fish have fled these waters." Morven muttered darkly, "They are smarter than we are, Arion." The pod's movement slowed, their strength draining with each empty moment. Arion's mind raged with desperation, his body heavy with fatigue. Neris' small cry pierced him deeper than any wound. The bond of survival thinned, betrayal brewing like a storm within Morven's silence. The sea pressed on, indifferent to their suffering, as shadows stretched long across the water. The water rippled with silence until the shadow returned, massive and steady. Arion braced himself, his body trembling as Neris pressed against him. The shark drifted closer, its movements slower, less violent. Alora whispered, "It hunts not only for itself." The great predator turned, revealing smaller shapes trailing near its belly. Neris gasped, "It has young." Tiny shark pups swam weakly, their eyes wide with hunger. Morven muttered, "Even killers starve." Arion's heart pounded as realization struck. The enemy was also apparent, desperate as he was. The truth unsettled him, cracking the certainty of rage. The predator was not evil, only bound to the same merciless law: survival. The pod shuddered in silence, caught between fear and reluctant understanding. Alora's voice deepened with urgency. "The sharks are not our greatest enemy. The sea has changed. It is poisoned." Arion frowned, confusion tightening in his chest. Neris blinked with innocence. "The ocean cannot betray us." Morven scoffed. "It already has. Look around." Dark patches of oil shimmered across the waves, choking the surface. Nets drifted below, threads of steel waiting like traps. Alora said, "This is not the ocean of our ancestors. The danger is no longer nature alone." Arion's heart twisted, rage and grief pulling against one another. He felt the truth in her words as the taste of chemicals burned on his tongue. The ocean, their home, had turned into a battlefield none of them could win. The currents carried them through black streaks of oil and broken nets. Neris coughed weakly, her body recoiling as toxins brushed against her. Arion pressed closer, fury burning inside him. "The ocean itself pushes us out," Thalora said softly. "It is not choice, Arion, it is consequence." Morven hissed. The humans carved their dominion above and below. Nets shimmered like steel webs in the dim water, waiting with silent cruelty. The pod weaved cautiously, but each stroke risked entanglement. Neris shivered, her body trembling against Arion's side. The ocean no longer felt infinite, but suffocating, shrinking with every poisoned current. The truth struck Arion harder than any predator's teeth. The sea no longer belonged to them. Morven broke from the pod suddenly, his strokes sharp and violent. Arion called, "Morven, stay with us!" But his rival's eyes blazed with cold determination. "I will not follow weakness any longer," Morven spat, turning his body away. Neris cried, "Please do not leave." Thalora's face hardened with grief. "Division will end us all." Morven ignored them, pulling two younger dolphins along with him. His tail carved through the current like a blade, his betrayal slicing deeper than predator's teeth. Arion's heart cracked with despair, rage threatening to consume him. Neris pressed into him, shivering. The pod splintered, their fragile unity fractured beyond repair. In Morven's retreat, the ocean claimed another kind of loss. The sea grew quiet as Morven vanished into the distance. Arion stared into the dark, his chest heaving with grief. Neris whispered, "Why does he leave us?" Arion's voice broke, "Because fear can shatter bonds faster than teeth." Thalora drifted near, her eyes heavy. "The truth is before us. The ocean belongs no longer to us. It is claimed by storms, predators, and those who poison it." Arion's gaze hardened, his body aching with the weight of realization. Neris clung tighter, her innocence fading as shadows grew. The silence pressed like a stone upon them, their survival bound to a truth harsher than death itself. The ocean, once a sanctuary, had become a graveyard dressed in silver light. The sea erupted with chaos as the pod swam into a deadly corridor. On one side, sharks circled, black eyes fixed with hunger. On the other, nets rose like walls, drifting higher with each swell. Neris gasped, "We are trapped." Arion pressed forward, his muscles screaming, "Stay close to me, Neris. I will not let them take you." Thalora darted upward, her voice urgent. "The current narrows. Push through or perish." Morven's absence clawed at Arion. His betrayal felt sharper in this moment of doom. The water pulsed with fear as every shadow lunged closer. Arion knew there was no way back, only forward through storm and death. His heart hammered with the rhythm of survival as jaws snapped inches away. Thalora surged forward, her body cutting through chaos with unwavering force. Arion shouted, "Do not leave us," but she did not slow. Neris cried, "Thalora," as the elder dolphin veered sharply toward the predators. The shark turned, teeth flashing, as Thalora rammed with brutal courage. The impact split the water with violent force. Arion's chest shattered with grief as he realized her intent. Thalora called once more alive, before the shadows consumed her. Blood filled the water, spiraling in clouds of crimson. Neris screamed, her innocence torn apart by sacrifice. Arion drove forward, his body trembling, rage and sorrow chaining him to her final gift. Arion forced Neris forward, his body aching with every stroke. The nets loomed closer, silver threads glimmering like steel blades. Neris whimpered, "It will catch us." Arion whispered fiercely, "I will tear it apart before I let it take you." His body crashed against the cords, straining as he pushed her through. The sea pressed harder, the weight of Thalora's sacrifice burning in his chest. Neris squealed, her small body slipping free through the narrow gap. Thought. Arion's skin scraped raw against the net, threads slicing into him. He grunted in pain, but his resolve did not falter. The current roared, dragging them into darker waters ahead. Out of the shadows, Morven reappeared, his body battered, eyes burning with desperation. Arion growled, "You left us." Morven hissed, "I returned because death waits for us all." The pod froze in terror as the rival darted closer. Neris whimpered, pressing into Arion. Morven slammed his body against him, their clash sending violent ripples through the sea. Arion fought back, rage and grief churning into one. Thalora's sacrifice flashed through his mind, giving him strength. Morven's voice roared, "You are no leader." Arion gritted, "I will not abandon them." Their bodies collided again, power and fury tearing currents apart. The pod trembled, caught in the storm of their battle. The clash reached its peak as Arion struck Morven with full force. Morven reeled back, his body twisting in defeat, blood trailing from his flank. The sharks turned, drawn to his weakness, circling with deadly intent. Arion gasped, his chest burning, but he pressed Neris forward. "Stay with me, do not look back." Neris whimpered, but obeyed, her body gliding beside him. Morven's final cry echoed behind them, swallowed by snapping jaws. Arion's heart shattered as betrayal ended in ruin. The current surged, pulling them through into fragile safety. Arion trembled, knowing survival carried a price that could never be repaid. The climax left silence heavier than thunder as the ocean closed its jaws around them all. Silence followed the storm of blood and betrayal. Arion drifted forward slowly, his body bruised and aching, each breath labored. Neris clung close, her wide eyes searching his face for strength. "Are we safe now?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Arion's chest ached as he forced a steady tone. "Safe enough to keep swimming." Behind them the water carried ghosts. Thalora's sacrifice, Morven's final cry, the pod torn apart. The current slowed, carrying them into dim calm. Arion felt the weight of every loss pressing into him, yet he could not stop. Neris' fragile heartbeat guided him, pulling him forward despite despair. The ocean was quieter, but its silence carried no comfort, only inevitability. Neris pressed tighter against Arion, her small body trembling with every current. "I am afraid," she whispered, her voice fragile as glass. Arion lowered his head, touching hers gently. "Fear means we are alive. Do not let go." The truth burned in him. Survival had not been victory but endurance. Thalora's last words echoed like faint currents in his mind, carrying wisdom he could no longer ignore. Neris' innocence anchored him, though it also tore at his heart. Every shadow reminded him of predators waiting, every ripple of nets drifting unseen. Yet Neris' soft gaze made him fight on. Arion's muscles ached, but his spirit clung fiercely to her fragile hope. The water grew heavy with scars as oil streaks drifted like shadows across the surface. Arion led Neris forward, his body scraping against currents thick with waste. She coughed weakly, her small frame shuddering. "Why does the ocean hurt us?" she asked. Arion's voice broke as he answered, "Because it no longer belongs to us." Thalora's warning rang true. This was no sanctuary but a cage filled with poison. The silence above was broken only by the hum of ships, invisible yet crushing. Arion pressed forward, knowing there was no home to return to, only survival in ruins. The sea carried their scars like a mirror, reflecting loss with every wave. Morven's absence lingered like an open wound. Arion glanced back often, his heart heavy with grief, though he knew betrayal had sealed Morven's fate. Neris whispered, "Will he return?" Arion sighed, his body slowing. "No, Neris, some are lost not to teeth but to choices." The truth weighed heavily, more bitter than blood. Thalora's strength had bought them time, but Morven's betrayal had broken trust that could never mend. The pod, reduced to fragments, drifted apart in silence. Arion felt the hollowness of leadership, its crown carved in grief and sacrifice. Neris pressed into him, anchoring him to purpose, her innocence softening his despair even as the sea roared with indifference. The sea calmed into haunting silence as the storm faded to memory. Arion carried Neris forward, his body trembling but resolute. The survivors, few and broken, followed faintly behind. The current led them into waters that felt strange, barren, stripped of life. Neris whispered, "Where will we go?" Arion closed his eyes, the answer hollow. "Wherever the ocean still lets us breathe." The truth burned. The ocean no longer belonged to them. It had become a graveyard dressed in silver light, unforgiving and absolute. Yet in Neris' fragile gaze, Arion found reason to continue, if only for one more day. Survival was not triumph, but it was all they had left. The dawn light seeped into the ocean, painting pale streaks across the waves. Arion led what remained of the pod forward, his body scarred but steady. Neris swam at his side, her small frame pressing close, eyes searching the horizon. She whispered, "Will the sea ever be ours again?" Arion's chest tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "It was never ours, Neris. We only borrowed its mercy." Behind them, the survivors trailed silently, broken by loss yet bound by instinct. The current pulled them into uncertain waters, directionless yet endless. Every stroke carried the weight of those who had fallen. The silence was not peace, but the echo of survival, fragile, fleeting, absolute. Neris swam ahead briefly, her tiny body twirling in the light. A soft cry left her throat, faint but determined, echoing Thalora's call from before. Arion froze for a heartbeat, struck by the sound that carried both grief and hope. The pod stirred, their weary bodies lifting slightly as if answering. Arion whispered, "You carry her voice now, Neris." Her eyes glimmered with fragile pride, though her innocence still trembled beneath it. The moment passed quickly, swallowed by silence, yet it lingered in their hearts. The ocean felt no softer, but Neris' cry gave it meaning. The fragile spark of endurance flickered, refusing to die. They swam onward into vast emptiness, the sea stretching wide but lifeless. No fish shimmered in schools, no songs echoed through the water. Neris whispered, "Why is it so quiet?" Arion sighed, his voice heavy. "Because silence is what remains when life fades." The pod moved through barren currents, shadows clinging where light failed. The ocean, once vibrant with voices, now felt hollow, as though even memory had been erased. Neris pressed closer, her small heartbeat steady despite fear. Arion carried her forward, determined not to let silence claim them both. The emptiness was not only around them but within, a reminder of what survival had cost. Shadows passed above as massive ships glided over the surface, their engines humming like thunder. The water vibrated with the weight of machines, drowning natural rhythm. Neris stared upward, her voice soft. "Do they hear us?" Arion shook his head slowly. "They do not listen. They never have." The pod sank lower instinctively, hiding from the looming giants above. Oil dripped faintly, darkening the current. The sea shivered with unnatural power, the rule of humans stretching further than teeth or storm. Arion's gaze hardened, his heart burning with unspoken rage. The ocean no longer belonged to them, and yet they remained defiant in silence. The sea stretched infinite, indifferent, as Arion slowed his pace. Neris pressed against him, her innocence now tempered by survival. He stared into the distance, his eyes unblinking, carrying the weight of every sacrifice. Thalora's cry, Morven's betrayal, the predator's hunger, the poisoned sea, all echoed within him. Neris whispered faintly, "Will we endure?" Arion's voice was quiet, almost a breath. "We must." The ocean did not answer, only pressed forward, vast and eternal. In the silence, Arion's gaze held unbroken, a final image carved in defiance. The echo lingered, survival without belonging, existence without promise, yet life against impossible odds.